Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the Wednesday night edition of the program. We're live, we're national, and we're taking your calls in a little bit. Lots to talk about tonight. If you want to join our late night national town hall conversation, give us a call. 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. And what a day it's been. Lots that I've been through today, and I can only imagine the rest of you have been through a crazy and a busy day. So a good evening to everybody. Now, there's a bunch of things I want to talk about. There's a story out there that I want to dig into a little bit later. Some very privacy-conscious Republicans have sank the FISA renewal bill that was being backed by Speaker Johnson. I say might be a good thing. Might be time to get rid of all that altogether. I don't know how many spies, foreign spies, we were spying on, but I know we were spying on an American president and other Americans. And that is no bueno where I come from. Let's see, what else do we have? I don't know if you guys remember. Might have been a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago. I had a guest on. This guy was a really good guest. He had just a tremendous amount of experience dealing with the homeless. And the stats, he blew me away. Something like 50%, I think it was between 50 and 80%, it's a huge number, of all homeless people are in California. I think it was 50% of all homeless people are in California, and 80% of them are in Los Angeles, as far as California goes. And I was just floored by those numbers. And I don't know if they're still accurate now, but it was a really interesting interview. And I wish I could remember his name. He was terrific. But headline today, California spends $13 billion trying to fight homelessness and can't say if it worked. Obviously, we know it hasn't worked. There's people in expensive neighborhoods in San Francisco that are now destroying things, living in tents outside their homes, squatting, people defecating in front of people's homes, in front of businesses. This has been going on for the last number of years. And, of course, the people just take it. They complain, but they take it. You know, some of them move to Idaho, but the rest of them, they just go for it. And it's a shame. And there was a big study the other day, and we talked a little bit about it because some journalist was under fire for talking about it, but it's back in the news, and it proves that transgender kids actually have other mental health diagnoses instead of just gender dysphoria, and that we're not paying attention to the real problems that are underlying this disease, and we're trying to treat the gender dysphoria. And most doctors agree that I've spoken with, again, I'm sure that's a biased sampling, but most doctors that I've spoken with say that that's not right, and especially the doctors from Do No Harm, and you should check them out. Do No Harm is an excellent organization. Let's see. What else do we have here that I wanted to go over? FBI whistleblowers say the Bureau needs to be abolished. I think I might be with them. Or a massive downsizing, the guys that are analysts that, catch bad guys that are like interstate bad guys and bank robbers. You have to keep some sort of, I guess, division that runs those labs and whatnot. But this massive post 9/11 FBI that's become a counterintelligence organization inside the United States, I think that largely has to be dismantled. And I have faith that a Trump administration might do something toward that. Something I know about Trump is that he's, in my opinion, a really fair guy. Right, just because he may not like what the FBI has done, just because he was the subject of these illegal FBI wiretaps and he's at the receiving end of this, people might think, oh, he hates the FBI because of what they did to him. But I could totally see Trump, just like he didn't fire James Comey initially, right? He didn't. There's a lot of things he didn't do because I think he was trying to be fair, and he didn't want to create even the appearance of any type of impropriety. So I don't think that's changed about his character. I think that remains the same. I think he wants to be fair. I think the famous phone call with Zelensky, the perfect phone call, I think that was, again, him trying to be fair, saying, look, I have suspicions about Ukraine. I have suspicions about the way that you guys are conducting business with the aid that we're giving you. And I want to make sure that things are on the up and up. I want some assurances. Now, they try to say it was political, but I think it was, sure, everything is political. But I think ultimately he wanted to make sure that he was making a good deal. Why? Because he's fair. Ultimately, he's a fair guy. So I don't know if Trump will demolish or abolish the FBI. I remember JFK saying that the CIA should be, broken into, what was it, 1,000 pieces, 100,000, 10,000 pieces. I don't think that happened either. So I think sometimes political goals are lofty. We'll see. I haven't heard Trump say that he would abolish the FBI, and if he did, then good for him. But I'm confident that we'll go in that direction, at least to minimize it and rein in some of that power and corruption in a Trump administration. And speaking of Trump, there is a clip of audio that I found really, really interesting, and I probably should have played it a couple of minutes ago. But, Trump is going to trial, right? We thought there would be no trials before the election. There's a trial starting on, let's see, what is that, the 15th, next Monday? And it's the one involving the infamous hush money payment made by Michael Cohen, Trump's then attorney, on behalf of his client, that they said this was a political expense. He said it was not. And they said that he was concealing it as a business expense when it was really a political expense because he was planning on running for president. And because he was planning on running for president, the incident with Stormy Daniels would have put a damper on his campaign, and therefore this was political, not personal. As if that wouldn't have put a damper on his campaign, his relationship with his wife. It wouldn't put a damper on his business dealings as an international businessman. I mean, it's a ridiculous argument, but that's what they were alleging, and this is where they are. And this is the whole Alvin Bragg case. And that's going to trial on the 15th, unless something happens between now and Monday that will stop that from happening, which I hope in fact does happen. But that's scheduled to happen, and he's required to be there, I think, the 3 days that they're scheduled to be in trial, the 14th, 15th, 15th, 16th, 17th, something like that. Anyway, the lawyer for Stormy Daniels, remember him? He was all over the media. Some people were saying he was going to run for president. Where is he today? He's in prison. Michael Avenatti. Right? Michael Avenatti's sitting in prison because he ripped off a bunch of his clients, including disabled people that he'd collected some personal injury lawsuit money from and never gave it to them after he won money for them in court and was living this lavish lifestyle all over television doing just God knows what. Anyway, he had something very interesting to say, and I don't want to do a hit and run and play it now, so I guess I'll have to leave you hanging for a little bit. But he basically says he doesn't think Trump can get a fair trial in New York. So keep that in mind. We're going to jump back to this topic in a little bit. Michael Avenatti giving MSNBC an interview yesterday from prison. And I think it's an interesting take from a guy who, literally started this whole thing, right? Between him and Michael Cohen and Alvin Bragg. Anyway, we're going to get into that. I also want to get an update on what is going on with the Ukraine funding debacle that continuously goes on in Washington. And yesterday I mentioned that there was a story I wanted to dig into. And it's the story of former CIA director John Brennan, who's originally from North Bergen, New Jersey, where I went to high school. And Brennan says, absolutely, Trump is helping Putin, this, that, and the third. And, this is all a play for Nadeau and whatnot to create problems. And I think there's a lot more to this than they're purporting in this article, right? Saying that Trump wants Putin to beat Ukraine. And I think that's the silliest thing I've ever heard. But I want to talk about that with somebody who totally understands that. Former governor of Virginia, former ambassador Jim Gilmore is scheduled to be with us coming up in a little bit. So keep it locked right here, folks. I am Rich Valdez. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Ukraine does not ask too much. We need air defense systems and fighter aircraft that can protect our cities from Russian terror. Few dozens of systems and a sufficient number of modern jets. And there will be no problem of Russian jets and bombs.
Now, that is not former anything. He's still Ukrainian president, excuse me, Volodymyr Zelensky. And Zelensky is talking about what he needs in order to be successful in this fight against Russia. Listen to this.
It is all absolutely realistic, and it depends only on the political will of our partners. Putin can fill with his aggression only the deficit of world's decisions, deficit that takes too long.
Now, of course, Zelensky is making a play for more funding. Of course, this is probably one of the most expensive wars that we've funded. And the question is, how do we recoup? Do we continue doing it? Do we do it in the form of a loan? How do we do it? And of course, everybody in Washington is, up, down, and sideways about getting this funding to Ukraine or not getting them, right? There's a lot of contention there. And former CIA chief John Brennan has weighed in saying that Donald Trump has given the green light to Putin's destruction of Ukraine. Again, this is a baseless claim, a political smear, if you will. But it's interesting that, that Brennan is still credible, I guess, because he's a contributor to one of the cable networks now. But it's very, very interesting. I think it seems like right before the election, you always hear rhetoric, but you don't always hear this type of rhetoric from my estimation, that kind of stirs the pot and, rattles the cage a little bit, especially internationally. But maybe that's just my naivete speaking. And I want to get this, I want to get clarity on this from someone that I think has a better understanding than I. And that's somebody that was former chair of the RNC, somebody that was governor of Virginia, and former ambassador. Jim Gilmore, welcome to the program, sir.
Good. Thank you very much, Rich. Glad to be here.
Likewise. Thank you. So when you hear about John Brennan, number one, as a former CIA chief, I think one will expect you to opine as a professional based on your experience, as I'm sure you do as a former governor and as a former ambassador. However, I don't think that one can be as flippant as Brennan is being, where it's saying that Trump is giving the green light for Putin to take over Ukraine. I think it's reckless and irresponsible. What's your opinion?
Well, first of all, let's be clear that I support Donald Trump. I've come out for him. He had his rally in Richmond. I was his keynote speaker there. I've compared the candidates. I'm a lifelong Republican, but I've compared the candidates. And when you consider President Biden and you consider President Trump, it's really not a tough choice. You need to be for President Trump. So I am that. So any comments that I make, I want to be clear to your listeners that I do not come at this as a Liz Cheney. I come at this as a loyal supporter of,
well, thank God
of
to
Donald
that,
Trump.
Governor.
Yes, sir. So now, that being said, it is imperative that this Ukraine aid pass the United States Congress. It's imperative that the Ukrainians be supported and be given the finances and the weapons they need in order to resist this Nazi-like aggression that's going on right now by the Russians. That is certainly my position on that totally. But if you really look at the big picture of this, I think that Donald Trump's going to win this election because of Joe Biden's mismanagement of the United States in terms of his inflationary policies, his ineptness on the border, the rising crime, which I think is concerned to everybody, and foreign policy. Just because he has been talking about supporting Ukraine doesn't mean he is supporting Ukraine. He hasn't been sending what's necessary. He hasn't been sending them the tools to win. And I've been in Europe, and I've talked to them, and they're very frustrated with President Biden. They think he's giving them enough to basically fight, but not enough to win. And they have to be in a position to win as long as Vladimir Putin is determined to conquer by aggression and atrocity.
Now, Governor Gilmore, when you were ambassador to the U.S. mission to the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, And these allegations that people continue to make, right? That destabilizing that Trump, right? That Trump and then helping Ukraine or whatever the argument is that Brennan is making here is going to somehow disrupt NATO and U.S. relationships with foreign allies, and that might suffer as a result of a Trump presidency or from supporting Ukraine. I don't see that as the case. Do you?
No, I don't. I don't think that's the case either, Rich. I think you're right to be questionable about this. I think that you're going to find people on the Biden team that are trying to place President Trump in the most extreme possible position. Okay, look, he's said some things that have been unfortunate in my view. But on the other hand, I look at the context and what he's been saying, and I think that he's been trying to put pressure on the NATO allies to step up to the plate, fulfill their obligations, spend the money necessary to be able to resist Russia, and to provide a real meaningful NATO. I mean, if you look at it that way, Trump's actually a supporter of NATO and wants a stronger NATO and is getting a stronger NATO. So when I was in Vienna on behalf of the United States, on behalf of President Trump, there wasn't anybody in the Trump administration that ever told me to back off of Russia. I was expressing a very strong position. The allies knew that we were a strong country. And it's really Biden's weakness, which has caused this insecurity in Europe, in my view. But look, I want to be real clear with your listeners about this. There's a lot at stake here. If the Russians prevail by conquest and violence, then at that point, the people of Eastern Europe and Western Europe are going to think, well, maybe, the United States is not going to be with us, and maybe it's better for us to make our separate deals. My position is, based on my experience, that a friendly Europe is essential to the safety and security of the United States. Our survival depends on this. We're not doing any charity or favors here, Rich. This is essential to America's safety and security. Otherwise, we're going to end up in a real war.
And with about a minute and a half to go in this segment, and we'll be coming back with former Ambassador Jim Gilmore. But my question to you, or your thoughts on our friends, our colleagues, conservatives amongst us that feel that it is a quote unquote rhino position to help Ukraine, even though we've committed to doing that in the Budapest Memorandum of Security Assurances.
Well, I'll tell you what, I joined the Republican Party and started campaigning for conservative candidates when I was 17. I've never had anybody call me a rhino. My conservative credentials are impeccable, and I've proved it by being governor, being ambassador, being attorney general, being a prosecutor. I know what it's all about. And my view is very central. I believe that conservatives in the United States either are or should be for American strength and leadership internationally. We have to listen. We're in a war, Rich. Make no mistake about it. Mm-hmm. We're in a war with China and with Iran and with Russia. And the only war that's really a shooting war right now is the one that Russia is taking out in Europe. But a shooting war globally is very possible if the United States steps back and becomes an isolationist power. By the way, there's nothing mysterious about this, Rich. If you didn't learn the lessons of World War II and Hitler, I mean, how often do we have to learn this lesson?
Right. Yeah, and this is an argument I get into in my personal life with friends and family that say, you know what, we have to stop being the world's policeman. We have to stop putting our nose in other people's business. And I try to remind them that's what American strength and leadership is all about. If we're not putting our nose in other people's business, that business is coming our way and it's not going to look good. Folks, we're on with former Ambassador and Governor Jim Gilmore. Coming right back, we're going to discuss the debacle on funding with the Ukraine situation in Congress. Don't go anywhere. We're coming right back. I'm Rich Valdez.
Glad to be on your show, Rich. It's just an amazing broadcast that I hope the rest of America listens to every day.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
House members are continuing to actively discuss our options on a path forward. There are a lot of different ideas on that, as you know. It's a very complicated matter at a very complicated time. And the clock is ticking on it, and everyone here feels the urgency of that. But what's required is that you reach consensus on it, and that's what we're working on.
That is Speaker Mike Johnson giving his thoughts on gaining consensus to try and get funding for this latest round of funding for Ukraine. And again, I think a lot of conservatives in the Republican Party are experiencing some fatigue on this. And look, I am too. I think there has to be an end game somewhere. But I also agree we can't turn our back on Ukraine at this point. I think we're pretty much all they've got. Anyway, let's bring our guest back in, former Ambassador and Governor Jim Gilmore. Sir, do you think that this war is winnable?
It is certainly won. In fact, it's already been won. The Russians attempted to, of course, take over all of Ukraine, which would have made a very major statement in Europe. They failed. They have lost 300,000 people dead and wounded, which is only about a third of what I'm hoping for. And I think that they can certainly win. And what they have told, what I've been told, is that they need the weapons in order to even up the battlefield, because the Russians right now are just throwing masses of people into it and pushing the Ukrainians back because they're running out of ammunition. And I think, Rich, that we've got to step up to the plate and get this job done. Now, I've heard all the arguments that have been made. Well, we have to look after our border first instead of somebody else's border, which is utter nonsense. Just because we have people illegally running across the border because President Biden won't do his job doesn't equate with a fascist invasion in Europe. I mean, there's just not the same things at all. And besides, we're a great power with a $20 trillion economy. We ought to be able to do more than one thing at a time. The argument that they're losers, the argument that America first means America alone, is frankly just Russian propaganda, Rich. That's what's going on.
Let's talk about that for a second, because I do believe that there is a firm grasp of this Russian propaganda by a lot of folks in this country, from people telling me, oh, come on, Putin's not so bad, to other things like, face it, Ukraine's not going to win. And obviously propaganda comes in many forms, and that's part of the psychological aspect of this war. But why do you think it's taking root within the Republican Party and causing such a rift?
American isolationism has always been sort of around. It was around right before World War II. We were being told that Hitler wasn't such a bad guy, that Neville Chamberlain said, well, this Czechoslovak problem is something that's far, far away. And we were listening to all that kind of thing until, of course, Pearl Harbor brought America back to reality. I want to avoid all that kind of thing, if possible, Rich. We don't need to be in a world war here. And my goal here is not to fight a war, but to avert one, because there's a big one right over the horizon here if the United States doesn't do the right thing. What do I think's going on? First of all, I think Russian propaganda is very appealing to people. Well, we got to look after our border, and every night we see people coming across the border. Well, we're a great power. We ought to be able to do more than one thing at once.
Yeah, I agree. I think, and we as a country, the United States, likely could with the right leadership. I think part of the problem here is we've got extremely bad leadership, and that's why we're failing in so many different categories, inflation amongst them. Now, what do you think is, or who do you think is the biggest obstacle that's holding up the funding in Ukraine? Is it staunch conservatives that have their heels dug in? Is it an inability to negotiate with them? What say you?
Well, first of all, I support the speaker if he brings a Ukraine bill forward. They ought to do that in the national interest of the United States. He shouldn't be thinking about himself. He ought to be thinking about the United States. That's what I'm thinking about. I mean, I don't know. I'm not in office right now. Right. I'm doing this as a complete volunteer because I believe in my country. And I think that the speaker will do the same thing. Sure, there are a small group of Republicans that are providing very loud, noisy leadership. I don't know whether they're just uninformed or whether they're actually, frankly, being bought. But the point is that that it's the reason is there's a problem is because the Congress is so closely divided, and it gives unwieldy power to a small group of Republicans who really don't represent the Republican Party at all, in my view. Republicans, I think, understand the necessity of being able to provide international leadership. Now, look, I'm not letting President Biden off the hook one bit. The problem with this country right now is the inflation which he's created, the border problem which he refuses to address vigorously, crime in the streets. All these things are making people very frustrated, and it's why I believe President Trump's going to win.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate because some of the people that I see that are presenting an obstacle, they present a good case about, spending, and I agree that we shouldn't be spending. There's a lot of things I agree on. I also agree that we can't turn our back on Ukraine. So I'm kind of caught in the middle here and think everybody's making a good case, but ultimately we need to do both, right? We need to cut spending and we need to kind of see this thing through to help the Ukrainians, but to make sure it's not perpetual. And kind of, I think Trump had an excellent proposal of making it a loan so that, they're on the hook for this and maybe they'll be a little more judicious in the spending. What are your thoughts on that type of proposition?
I think that's a good position because it worked against the Nazis. Lend-Lease became the rule of the day. It saved Britain at a time that they were pretty much standing alone, and it can save Ukraine. So I'm okay with that. If the Ukrainians recover and they get to be a major power again or a power in Europe with good economics and their grain exports, then I think that they ought to be returning that money back to the American taxpayer. I have no trouble with that. But, take a look at the situation. When this war started, the Russians basically said, look, we're going to control the Black Sea. We're not going to allow you to do any exports. The Ukrainians have sunk the Black Sea fleet of the Russians, sunk it. Mm-hmm. So they're doing well, but they can't stand up to wave after wave of Russian soldiers if they don't have any bullets, or they don't have any ammunition, or they don't have any artillery. And by the way, we are not really in a position right now to do our defense industries the way we're supposed to. If this bill passes, it's going to help us build up our defense industries, which are going to help the United States in the long run. But I want to say as loud as I can on this, Rich, we're not turning our backs on Ukraine here. We're turning our backs on ourselves. We're getting ready to get ourselves in a big war up the road if we surrender our values and surrender our leadership and communicate to the Chinese. That's what we're going to do. Then at that point, you're in it in the Pacific and the Europe, and then at that point, it's all the game on, and I don't want to see that happen.
Folks, this is former Virginia governor and ambassador to the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, Jim Gilmore. Governor, you are a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot. I thank you for being with us tonight. Is there a website or a social media account you want the audience to take a look at?
Well, just go on both Facebook and on LinkedIn, and I think you'll be able to find that. And then there's a web page also, and I don't have it at my fingertips, Rich, but I'm easy to find. And I'm just happy to have a chance to talk to my fellow conservatives on your radio show.
Well, thank you for that, sir, and we'll definitely have you back. I appreciate it, sir.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
You bet. God bless. All right, folks, we're going to your calls and more straight ahead. Do you agree? Do you disagree? What do we do with Ukraine? Do we abandon them? Do we fund them? Do we lend them the money? What say you? 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, welcome back. And we continue our conversation. I want to go to you, the American people, to see your thoughts on what you hear coming out of Washington. You hear some in Congress saying if you spend another dollar on Ukraine without putting a dollar towards the border, we're getting rid of Speaker Johnson. Then you've got those that say I won't vote for any funding for Ukraine. Then you've got some saying, the majority, saying, look, we are bound by the Budapest Memorandum of Security Assurances when we said, listen, give up your nukes and we will protect you against Russia. And we haven't done a whole lot of protecting. It's ultimately ended up as we're going to give you some missiles and we're going to send you something. And I think Obama, as we famously know now, sent the blankets. Trump sent some missiles, and then, to send more, had some questions, got in trouble for that, got impeached over it. And here we have Biden that's, somewhere between Trump and Obama in sending some aid, but not wanting to send more, but wanting to send a ton. And then, he's just kind of like all over the place, right? He won't send jets. He won't give them what they need to win, but he'll give them enough to do what he's doing, right? To keep sending money. And that's, I think, the problem that most people have. Anyway, let us check in with Jeff. Jeff is calling us from Elyria, Ohio on WEOL. Jeff, go right ahead. You're on with Rich Valdez.
Yeah, I'm wondering what the answer to all this is. We can't keep sending money out of this country when we got all kinds of money trouble here. We got $35 trillion deficit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what are we supposed to do? Just keep sending money to all these other countries and take care of them? I don't know the answer.
I don't either, but I do know, I think we eventually, I guess the answer is pretty simple. While it's, not an easy one, it's a simple one. We ultimately, nobody can give more than they have, right? We've been playing that game for a little while, and it's caused inflation. Once you play it a little longer, you get to hyperinflation. Once you pass hyperinflation, you've got nothing, right? You've got the total crumble and collapse of the economy and the dollar. Now, is that guaranteed to happen? I would say most people in Washington are like career poker players that, they love to be in a casino and they're willing to take a lot of risks and they take things to the edge and then they come back and they feel very confident in their ability to play this game. So I think Biden's one of those guys and he's like, oh, come on, we've done this a million times. Come on, man, I got hairy legs. And he thinks it's very easy. You print a little money, you pull back a little bit, we'll be long gone before this has to be dealt with. But I think we're getting closer and closer to that tipping point. We get closer and closer to the point of no return. And that's where it's dangerous. So, yeah, I agree with you that we need to be very cautious in how we support Ukraine. I can't say we should, abandon ship today, right? But I do think maybe we should draw a line in the sand. And I don't think Biden's going to be the guy to do it. So that may have to wait for Trump to come in to say, look, no more funding for Ukraine unless this happens or unless that happens, and create some conditions. And that's something Biden should be doing. Right? Ultimately, I think Joe Biden should step up, Jeff, and be like, hey, look, I will help. We're committed to helping you. However, this is what we need you to do. And exercising some of that leadership. But instead, he's a real isolationist, right? And it's almost like he's taking the advice of so many of my Republican friends, conservative friends, that say we should just stay out of their business. I think that's what he does. He doesn't want to get involved in ending anything. He's just like, sure, keep sending them money, no problem. I'm staying out of this one. Same thing with Israel. He's like, oh yeah, well look, don't do that, or I might have to pull back a little here. But what I'm pulling back there, I'm just going to send to the other guys to look fair, and I'm going to send it over there. And I really think that's what it is. I don't think Biden has a dog in the Hamas-Israel fight. I don't think he's pro-Hamas. I think he might be under the influence of Iran at times from pressure, but ultimately, I don't think he cares. I think he's just going with the political flow, the winds, whichever way, whoever's got more sway that day, he goes in that direction because he's all about just trying to leave behind what he perceives to be as a good legacy. And I don't think he has any clue of how bad this legacy looks right now, at least from my view. But I'm with you. Without ending our spending addiction, we're going to end up in a lot of problems. Now, maybe somebody else somewhere has a different way of solving this problem that isn't as black and white as I think of it, as you cut spending and then you're able to start to recoup. But maybe somebody else has a different plan. I don't know what that plan is. I'm with you on this one, Jeff. We need to change the way we do things, and we can't endlessly give money to everybody everywhere. It doesn't mean we don't give out any money. I think it means that we're a lot more cautious. We're a lot more judicious with what we're doing. And we're able to have some principle that we stand on. And lamentably, Joe Biden has no principle to stand on. I don't think he's got a firm position on anything other than, he likes President Xi and he will do just about anything that Iran asks, and that is very sad to me, Jeff.
Yeah, I agree with you totally. How can he's giving money away that's not even his? It's the taxpayers' dollars.
Right. And I think he does that in the name of we've been giving money away forever and a day. Foreign aid, in my opinion, has always been synonymous with bribes. We bribe other countries to either do our dirty work, to keep another country at bay, or to say, oh, are you going to invade this little country? Look, we don't want to get involved in that. What do you need, some foreign aid? All right, here's some foreign aid. Leave this one alone. Or don't do that anymore. Don't do this. Right? It's the bargaining chip when money fixes the problem. But some conflicts internationally can't be fixed with a foreign aid bribe. Sometimes you got to go further, the threat of military action or a sanction, or cutting off their ability to make money in the United States. And there's a lot of ways to wheel and deal when it comes to dealing with global players. You got to just know what they need. And I just feel like Joe Biden doesn't play that game. It's always what he needs. It's always, here's what I need. I'm going to send you my son Hunter. He's going to carry the bag open. You just put whatever you need in there. You guys gave gold bars to Bob Menendez. I'll take those too. Right? He's just open. He's open to cutting a deal on anything that benefits him, not necessarily the country. And that's my issue with him. Jeff in Elyria, Ohio, thank you for your call. Big shout out to WEOL. And we go to the rest of your calls and more straight ahead. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, we come back to the phones and your calls on this Ukraine funding. Let's go to Akron, Ohio, WNIR. Check in with Roger. Roger, what's up, my man? You're on with Rich Valdez.
Hey, good evening, Rich. Just out of curiosity, how long have it been since you took over for Jimbo?
I started in May of 2022 as a sub, and then we switched over in October of 20.
Yeah, he went so fast. That was so sad. Yeah. I
remember
you guys were I remember you were broadcasting together his last couple of weeks.
Yeah,
I called in then, and it was pretty sad, but it goes so fast.
God bless his
soul. It seemed like yesterday that you started, but I still enjoy your show very much.
Thank you.
But your guest tonight kind of tipped me to believing in supporting them over there, because that's how World War II started, was ignoring it.
Yeah. And it's unfortunate, right? Because we are spending money that we don't have, and it's a really tough situation. And I don't begrudge anybody who says I'm not voting for that. I don't begrudge them. I really don't. I think because we can't be flippant. We really do need a plan, and I think Trump has really got the right idea, saying let's make it alone. And we've done it in the past, and great. We need to continue doing that.
And some of them people speaking the loudest are just taking advantage of the close situation. Look at me. That's what you do in politics. So
right. Strike while the iron's hot, and I don't begrudge them for that either. I did a TV show today that'll air on the weekend on Newsmax, and I was saying that, and some of the people on the panel were looking at me like I had 14 heads. But the reality is, it is politics, right? Politics involves a degree of performance art, political theatrics. It's part of the game. That's how you balance what you do, and those who do it the best are usually the best at the game. And it's just the reality of it. You do have to provide results, but sometimes the drama helps you get those results, if that makes any sense. So keep banging the pots and pans. Roger, thank you so much. Akron, Ohio, WNIR. Thanks for your compliment as well. Folks, we're coming right back. Your calls and more in Open Phone America. Plus, we've got a whole second hour before we get to the third hour. So just keep it right here. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to hour number 2 of our program. And if you want to join our late night national town hall conversation this Wednesday evening, give me a buzz, 833-482-5337, 8334-VALDEZ. Now, there's a number of things that we're talking about. We've been talking about Ukraine funding, and we'll get your reactions to that at the top of the next hour. We've also been discussing what's going on in America at night. And one of the things that was going on today that I want to have a discussion about tonight is the economic outlook of our country, right? Doesn't look good. Doesn't look good at all. The border continues to be a problem. We've got political issues coming out of Washington, like, whether we renew the FISA Act or not. Just a lot of things that we have to address, and I don't think we're really actively or appropriately addressing. And good old Joe El Baboso Biden, who I've renamed now to Joe El Viejito Biden. So we've gone from making him the bumbling, drooling, foolish Biden to the old man Biden, Joe El Viejito Biden. And Joe El Viejito Biden was giving a press conference today with the Prime Minister of Japan, Fumio Kishida. And to my chagrin, surprise, I don't know what other adjectives I can use here. I was blown away by this. He says that inflation is down from where it was when he took office. This, of course, is not the case. And of course, on a day like today where we see inflations come in, the CPI numbers came in, and it was not where they expected it to be, right? 3.5% increase in March. I think we're at the second month in a row now. Not good. You saw 2.3% in February. And again, these are just conservative numbers that I'm seeing in reports. This is not an in-depth conversation with an economist, which we're about to do. But I want you to hear what Joe El Viejito Biden said about the American economy and inflation. Check this out.
We have dramatically reduced inflation from 9% down to close to 3%. We're in a situation where we're better situated than we were when we took office, where inflation was skyrocketing. And we have a plan to deal with it, whereas my opposition talks about two things. They just want to cut taxes for the wealthy and raise taxes on other people. And so I think they have no plan. Our plan is one I think is still sustainable.
Now, listen, he says inflation was skyrocketing when he took office and that we're in a better place now. How? How is that possible when it went from 1.25% to 1.4%? That was the extent of what I recall. Maybe I'm wrong. Let me bring in one of the pros. But before I bring in the pro, I have to say I take umbrage with this particular pro. I have a bone to pick with this particular pro, Dr. E.J. Antoni. He is a economist, research fellow at the Heritage Foundation. But E.J. Antoni, sir, it says on your Twitter that you are the official economist for my buddy Rich Zeoli and our colleague Vince Congolese, and I thought you were our guy. What's up with that?
Hey, you know what? Have your person talk to my person. Maybe we can work something out, Rich.
Maybe. I love those guys. Both Vince. Whenever I'm in D.C., I catch that local, and Rich Zeoli and I. We go way back. I literally was an intern to Congressman Scott Garrett in 2004. What is that? 20 years ago. And Rich Zeoli was the boss there. He was the chief of staff to Congressman Garrett back then. So I've known Zeoli for a very, very long time, and we used to work together at WPHT in Philly. So I just wanted to bust everybody's stones a little bit. But I saw that and I thought, come on. I got to be able to get on that list. I'm calling my people to call your people right away. Now, folks, we're on with EJ Antoni. He's the best, and I'm happy that you're here. We're usually on the same page with these things, and you understand this a lot better than I do. But it sounds like Joe El Viejito Biden is lying his butt off here.
Well, I think that's probably the most charitable way to put it. There are a few other things I'd like to say, but it might get you flagged with this being public airways and whatnot. Anyway, look, here's, I think, the simplest way to put it for everybody to understand. When Biden took office, prices were rising at a 1.4% rate. That means in the past 12 months, prices rose 1.4%. So that's what he inherited. That apparently is skyrocketing inflation. Fast forward a year and a half into his term, prices were rising at 1.2%, not over 12 months, over a single month. In other words, Biden managed to run up inflation so much that prices were rising about as fast in a single month as they did in the entire year before he took office. So that's the record. Those are the facts, and it's the reality. Biden created the inflationary mess. He didn't inherit it. So when he talks about bringing inflation down from 9%, why is that relevant? What does that have to do with what you inherited and where things are today? I mean, that's like saying I'm going to pull a Bluto from what's the movie Animal House, where he's got a 0.0% GPA and he's going to improve it slightly, maybe to a 1.0. He's going to go from a 0.0 to a 1.0. And how is that an improvement when you started out at, let's say, a 2.0 or a 3.0 GPA? I mean, this is just absolute nonsense.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I find it, again, there's been plenty of bold-faced lies, but I always, Jay-Z, the rapper, always comes to mind. And he's got one of his lyrics says, men and women lie, but numbers don't. And I always think that that's a truth that we have to live with. And even Biden has to live with that truth. And for him to just say that, we're doing better now than we were when he took office, to me is just the first part. I get it. If you want to say, look, I jacked up in inflation to whatever percent, and now we're at 3.5%, and that's fantastic compared to how badly I was doing. That's one thing. But to say from what you inherited and when you walked into office, I think that's just a bold-faced lie. And I wanted to see if there was any way that I was missing on how you could try to make that true.
No, there is no way that you can square that circle, Rich. And it's just like when they kept telling us, inflation is transitory, right? I mean, think about it. When Biden took office, he wasn't complaining about skyrocketing inflation. He was saying that there is no inflation, everything's fine. And when inflation appeared, then he told us it was transitory. How the story has changed, right? It wasn't, oh gosh, this is terrible and I inherited it. It's not my fault. It doesn't even exist. And then it was, it's only temporary. Oh yeah, this has been real temporary. And then it was, inflation is trending to 2%. Remember that lie? Well, if you go back and you look at the monthly data and you annualize it, in other words, you take the monthly increases and you say, what happens if we have this not for a single month, but for a whole year? We have this steady increase in prices. Inflation has actually been trending towards over 3%. Not 2%. Well, guess what? We've arrived at that 3% plus rate. We've been here for quite a while, for several months now, and there is zero indication we are going any lower anytime soon because there's no indication the Treasury is going to slow down their pace of borrowing anytime soon. Absolute insanity.
Folks, we're on with EJ Antoni, and a couple of things I want to nail before we let you go, and we're going to take a quick pause here, though. The $25 McDonald's deal, I want to get into that, and California's minimum wage. And also this number that's floating around, that the U.S. national debt interest, we're now paying more on interest on our national debt than we are on defense spending. And that is a scary proposition. So, folks, stick with us. We're on with EJ Antoni, economist with the Heritage Foundation. Don't move a muscle.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. best guests, the best opinions. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
National polls are showing he's just as unpopular as before, and his handling of the economy has not been good. Is this an economy that you are proud to run for re-election on?
I mean, look, and the previous president said, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? 4 years ago, we didn't have toilet paper, right? We are better off than we were 4 years ago. We are in the right direction. The price of goods, the price of the cost of inflation is going down.
Yeah. Here we go again with the twisting of the facts. So we're doing better because we have toilet paper. And again, in 2020, we did not have toilet paper, but it's 2024, EJ Antoni. So again, is everybody sipping this Kool-Aid? What say you?
Well, it's amazing how we get to pick and choose the starting point. What I mean by that is here they're using 2020, right? But whenever you hear people like Janet Yellen talk about how, well, real wages, in other words, inflation-adjusted wages, are higher today than they were in 2019. Okay, your boss wasn't president in 2019. He wasn't president in 2020. So why are you including 2 years of his predecessor? Well, the implicit statement in there is the only way I can make my boss look good is if I use 2 years worth of his predecessor's data. I mean, if you really want to make the numbers look good, say real wages are higher today than they were in 1857. I mean, that's going to be a really big increase for you. So they pick and choose what they want to use as the starting date, Rich, whenever it suits their narrative.
Yeah, and I think as you were saying it, I was thinking the same thing. Well, if you're going to go with Trump, you could go with Abraham Lincoln, right? It doesn't make a difference because it doesn't make your guy look good. And I think ultimately that's what we see, and we see it time and again. And that was Congressman Eric Sorensen from Illinois yesterday making this case that with ABC News that we should somehow be, I guess, grateful that we have toilet paper and that inflation has come down, even though it was Biden that pushed inflation up. Now, I wanted to dig into this story because I think it's just an interesting one where we have McDonald's, and this is a Fox Business headline. Hold on a second. Here it is. McDonald's $25 deal goes viral. Users blame California's minimum wage increase, your new normal. This recent study found that McDonald's prices have risen by 100% since 2014, but the chain disputes the study's findings to Fox Business. And again, I don't know why they picked 2014 as the starting rate, maybe because that was 10 years ago. I don't know. But that's the case, and they're saying that the cost of chicken nuggets, right, and that the current price of a meal bundle is $25.39. With tax, roughly $27. So $25.39 for a 40-piece chicken nuggets. I didn't even know they came in 40 pieces. I guess that's 2 20 pieces with the fries. And she says you couldn't even throw in the Sprite. So it's funny, but it really it shows you how expensive it is to eat out. And I think that's why I've stopped going to drive-thrus, because it really isn't $8, $10, or $12 anymore.
You know, Rich, we're going to sit around one day with our grandkids and say, back in my day, we had a dollar menu.
Right, the dollar menu.
It's appalling, but it's where we are today. And it's a combination of different wrong-headed government policies, things like the onerously high minimum wage in California, which, you know, this is a very good example of how businesses pass costs on to consumers. So it's not as if you're going to hose the greedy businessman. No, you're just going to make the people who buy fast food pay more. Well, who disproportionately buys fast food? Lower income folks. So the exact same group that you're trying to help with this law, you're actually hurting. But the other thing is that things like a McDonald's Big Mac are actually a really good way to measure inflation. Why? Because they include a ton of different inputs. First of all, there's a lot of different types of food, or at least foodstuffs, right? There's the beef, there's the bread, there's the different condiments like the lettuce, onion, etc. And so all of those essentially capture a lot of different price increases. But on top of that, to make a Big Mac, you have labor costs. All of those products had to get to the restaurant on a truck. So now you have diesel fuel in there. You get the utility bills from the McDonald's itself. And so all of these inputs go into the final price for a Big Mac. And it ends up capturing a surprisingly large section of the pie, if you will, of the nation's economy and of consumer prices. So it just goes to show you how much faster inflation is rising than the official government metrics will tell you.
I love that. I love this. You're speaking my language here when you talk about Big Macs and the economy. I get this economy, right? And I think you're spot on, right? This is really it. It measures a lot of things from a lot of places. And when you increase minimum wage, as they have in California, and they've considered doing it in many other places to this new higher number from $16 to $20 for fast food workers, while it seems like a win for the little guy, ultimately it's a loss for the little guy because employers really aren't in business to take a loss. And I think that's a part that of the conversation that's missed by a lot of people, where they think, oh, you're just going to pay me more. Yeah, you can pass it on to the consumer and sell $25 chicken nuggets, but how many customers do you get? When you have a robust dollar menu, you get a lot of customers. When you sell chicken nuggets for $25, probably not as many. So ultimately, it's the employee that gets less hours, or the guy that gets axed because there isn't enough money to go around to keep all these people. And I feel like this is something I learned having a small business when I was younger. But this is something I think that I'm going to say it gets lost in translation. How do we fix that so that people aren't really easily swayed when they hear, wow, minimum wage increase, sign me up?
Probably it'd be a good start to close down all the public schools, since it's fundamentally, we laugh, but it really is fundamentally a problem with a complete lack of critical thinking skills among the American populace. And that is due largely to our failed public school system. And I think at this point, the only cure for it really is going to be a lot of pain. You can tell a little kid, don't put your hand on the hot stove, but the best way to guarantee they'll never do it again is if they do it once. That's not to say they should, obviously, right?
Sure.
You hope that the kid is going to listen to you. But
every parent listening knows exactly what you're talking about.
Yes, but to go back to our analogy with if we want to bring in the public school system, that's like the parent who never bothers to tell their kid, don't touch the hot stove. So now the only way to find out is the painful way. Well, what's basically going to happen now in California, you've already had several restaurants say we're going to do things like bring in robots to make our fries or to operate different, automate essentially different parts of the restaurant, even if that's just automating the cash register, replacing the person with a kiosk. And so you actually have a couple of McDonald's now already in different parts of the nation. The entire store is automated. You go up to a kiosk, you place your order, and the robot, will bring you your bag with your food. And so as people start losing their jobs, as they start paying more for their food, I think that's the only thing that's going to make the reality sink in that these are really bad public policies we're implementing, no matter how good they sound.
Outstanding. Folks, that's EJ Antoni. You can catch him on Twitter at Real EJ Antoni. And he doesn't know it yet, but he's the soon-to-be in-house economist here at Rich Valdez, America at Night. EJ, thank you for being with us, sir.
Thank you for having me, Rich.
You bet, brother. All right, folks, we're coming right back. Your calls and more. Plus, we're going to get into a little bit of ageism. Is it happening in the workplace? Don't go anywhere.
Across America to the liberty-loving Latino, Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Now, I don't know about you. I don't know that I've ever been discriminated against because of my age. Because of my politics, for sure. Because of my race, ethnicity, gender, maybe. But because of my age, I don't think so. But who knows? You never know. But it seems to be a thing, and there are people out there that have lamentably been the recipient of age discrimination in the hiring process, which is illegal, but it still happens, and usually it's not something intentional. But there was a recent survey of 1,000 hiring managers by Resume Builder, and it found that 42% consider age when reviewing resumes. Age bias by hiring managers is also difficult for a candidate to prove, right? If they don't tell you, hey, we want somebody younger, how would you know? So some of the reasons for age-related bias against older candidates include the likelihood of retirement, potential health issues, lack of experience with technology, a fixed mindset, and a need for time off, according to some of the survey responses. But I've interviewed people on this program that said that they've seen age-related bias from other perspectives, like saying young people have way too much of an emphasis on mental health or on working from home, and if you want the job done right, you hire somebody who's a boomer. So I think this discrimination can kind of cut both ways, and job seekers can reduce this risk by making some simple changes in their resume, and I'm going to leave that to the pros to discuss. Michael Nadeau is a hiring pro, and he's the founder of a company called Cnect. Michael, welcome, sir.
Yeah, welcome. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. So let's talk a little bit about this because I find it to be a very interesting topic. We've got people that are facing age discrimination, and I haven't, again, I don't hear about this regularly, and I guess because it's so hard for people to prove. But looking at this report from earlier this week, age discrimination remains a problem in the hiring process for younger candidates as well, from WTOP News. And it cites this Resume Builder survey that say 42% of people are considering age when reviewing resumes. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so look, the concept of discrimination is never going to go away. It's as real as the eclipse a couple of days ago. It's happening. And just like that eclipse happens every X amount of years, discrimination happens every second of every day. We're predisposed as human beings that we're born. We are unbiased. We only have one feeling, that's love. And then we're taught politics. We're taught race. We're taught, morals, values, religion, all this stuff. And it's predisposed in us. And hiring is the same exact way. And to think that we're ever going to remove this from the hiring process is literally never going to happen. And it's an unfortunate aspect of hiring that people feel they're discriminated against because of their age. But the realities are, you could argue both sides of the equation. Companies don't want to hire the younger generation due to multiple things that you just mentioned, right? Their work ethic, their lack of experience, their need for time off. It's a totally different generation than I grew up. And the older generation, you get down to, well, how long are they going to work for? And how long are they going to be in the workforce, and is their medical bills going to be higher? And so all of those things, certainly they exist, but it's something that's never going to go away in terms of people have predisposed bias when they're looking at a piece of paper.
Yeah. And I'm with you there. I once heard Andy Stanley say that, some problems are problems you can solve, and some problems are actually just tensions that you have to manage, right? Or, I guess problems you have to mitigate and that can't be solved. And it sounds like that this is one of those where you want to, mitigate it to minimize the amount of occurrences. What is it that you would advise folks that are looking to hire people to keep in mind? How do they keep it merit-based?
So I believe the biggest flaw that we have in the hiring process today is we have a broken process. The world has evolved so rapidly. And I look back to, say, the world, let's call the world, the next generation of the world started in 2008, which really wasn't that long ago when you look back. I'm 50 years old, so 2008 doesn't seem that long ago to me. But the world we changed as a society in 2008. And by 2015, we changed again so drastically it was almost unheard of. And what happened in 2008 was we all got devices that were plugged into our ear, in our phone, in our hands, that gave us information that was unbelievable. It was easy to consume, it was easy to digest, and it was easy to access. Yet the hiring process over the last 30 years has only improved by digitizing job boards, taking the old want ads and putting them onto digital media, and a place to now put your resume where the world can find it. But the question really becomes, is your resume an accurate representation of who you are? And the answer to that is absolutely not, because behind every resume is a story. It's a story, it's a person. And so if someone were to tell me, hey, you want to watch Oppenheimer, fantastic movie. For me, it was a little slow and it was a little long. It was a little drawn out. But I will tell you, the trailer didn't make me feel that way. The trailer to that movie made me go to the theater with my wife and sit there for 2.5 hours and try not to fall asleep. Okay? What we don't have in hiring is the ability to streamline a process. So I believe the answer to this is to be your authentic self. I believe the answer to this is to allow people to tell their story. Because at the end of the day, companies are forced to make a decision, and sometimes it falls into a category because they don't have enough data that could fall into this category of discrimination. And unfortunately, they don't have enough information to say, man, I don't really know who Rich is. I'd like to hear Rich speak. Well, fortunately for you, people can just Google Rich and hear you speak, right? But the regular world doesn't have that opportunity to tell their story. So I believe the concept of a resume is an outdated and, quite frankly, a flawed tool to represent who I am as a human being. I am 50 years old. I have been working for 30 years in the workforce. 2-page summary is not going to tell you who I am. What's going to tell you who I am is me, my voice and my tone and my desire to actually want to work there. So I think the hiring process could improve by allowing people to tell their story and bring their authentic self to nature, the way we communicate as human beings today.
You know, Michael, you bring up a lot of good points, but what goes through my head, and I guess the question that arises for me is, while I agree that, you know, it went from the classified section to monster.com and whatever it is today, LinkedIn or wherever, you know, indeed.com. But I also think that there is that, whether you're me or somebody else, I think people are Googling people to see what comes up. You know, are you on some weird board, or are you in a Facebook post about being, you know, a serial dater or cheater or something like that? And I think some people, you know, are being judged by their social media accounts, kind of, you know, by employers, those that have a public account, which I would say, if you're not willing to be judged as a public figure, don't have a public Facebook account, right? Or one of those things. But I think that's part of it. I just don't know how much of a part of it is in the world of hiring now. What would you say is, we'll pause right here. When we come back, you can tell us your thoughts on the role that social media plays in the hiring process. Folks, we're coming right back with Michael Nadeau. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. This is America. This is Night. This is Rich Valdez.
All right, folks, we're coming back with Michael Nadeau. He is a founder of a company called Cnect, C-N-E-C-T. And Michael, we were talking about the role that social media plays for some people. I read a case study not too long ago of a woman who had made some comments about the her thoughts of the riots back in 2020 and the George Floyd death and all of that. And she was fired for her position on that, which wasn't, you know, she picked a side, but it wasn't in a mean-spirited or nasty, negative or derogatory way. She just stated her case, and they still fired her. And she took it to court, and she didn't win. because of many different reasons. I think mainly the defense that she chose wasn't a really effective defense. But ultimately, I say that, employers, more and more of them are implementing social media policies. And I think that's something to be aware of if you're on the market for a job. Yeah? No?
100%. So let's think about the 4 most important relationships in your life. And of course, you could expand it to 5, 6, 7, 8. Your spouse, your kids, your family, your friends, and your job. So what makes a relationship strong? Well, at the core of it, you have to have mutual values, mutual respect, mutual feelings and understanding. It's very rare for people to, and it happens. I have friends that are very left and I'm very right, and I have friends that are here and I'm very there, and we have mutual respect. But the core component of a great company is their culture. And very rarely do you find cultures that are a mixture of different chemistries. And so employers sometimes get the bad rap of, well, you're discriminating me. Well, no, maybe you're just not a great culture fit for our
maybe you
organization.
suck. Right.
Yeah, maybe you're just, maybe your views are actually too wild. So the reality is what you put on social media is a representation of who you are as a human being. And ultimately, the employer has the right to make a choice to find out if you're going to be a great fit in our culture. And people waste so much time. It takes 2.5 hours to schedule a first interview, only to know in 20 seconds, this isn't a great fit. It takes weeks and weeks on end to get through the hiring process. 90% of candidates don't even get any feedback. Hey, we went in another direction. Companies don't even offer them the courtesy of telling them where they're at. Yet we live in a world where Amazon will tell us our toothbrush that we ordered this morning is sitting on your porch.
Yeah.
And they sent me
and your Ring
messages.
camera will show you.
Yeah, and they sent me 50 alerts telling me every stop of the way. And so society has changed. The ready. By the way, there is a place for everyone. There are no bad profiles. Yes, there are bad people in the world. There's a very small segment of that. But at the end of the day, there is a place for everyone. The hiring process is archaic, it's outdated, and it's not utilizing technology to its fullest. We have the ability to get to know people with a click of a button. And inversely, I can send you who I am as a company. Then you can decide whether you want to be here. Tell me, number one interview question in the entire world, tell me about yourself. Why do we have to go back and forth 5, 6, 7 times just for you to tell me about yourself? Why can't we do that at the expression of interest? So I believe the hiring process is flawed. And so when we find something that's broken in society or in the world, we tend to look at these excuses of why it's broken. Well, they're discriminating me. Well, no, actually, you're just not a great fit for that company. Right? You're just not the best fit. And there are cases where discrimination, we could argue, is completely normal and acceptable. Would a 70-year-old woman get a job at Hooters? Absolutely not. That's right. That's not what they're trying to accomplish. Does someone in a wheelchair deserve to be an Amazon delivery driver? They're capable of being a delivery driver. They can drive a car. They can get out of the car. They can move a package. But can they do it at the speed that's required for that job? The answer to that is no. It's no. And so what happens is we have these super obscure cases, and we want to throw up the flag and say we're discriminating people. But at the end of the day, human beings have bias. Every single human being has some sort of bias. I believe the best way to remove bias is to learn about a human being at their core. Like, who are they? Who are you? Like, what makes you happy? What are you passionate about? Why do you want to work here? And if you can do those things in a streamlined fashion, I think what will happen is we can improve the hiring process, and people will, stop blaming these excuses that are happening. I think one of the biggest problems in hiring today is that an employer gets 200 resumes in the first day. And they're forced to say, well, let me just throw out all the people that are X. And really what they're doing is discriminating. But the reason they're doing it is a lack of data to make a decision. And I'll tell you a wonderful story. A couple of years ago, 2 years ago, April, I got a resume, a digital profile through our platform. The person had completed all the things they needed to do. So as a hiring manager, it came to me. And this person, I scrolled through all their information really fast. like within, 30 seconds, which is what people do. And I looked and said, I went down to his education, and he graduated high school in 1987. Well, I graduated high school in 1991. So at the time, 2 years ago, I was 48 years old. So I'm doing the math in my head. I'm like, well, he's 52, 53 years old. And I'm like, I don't know if that's going to fit in our culture. And I made this bias in this decision. I'm a human being. I'm not saying I'm proud of it, but that's where my brain went. But my ability to click on his video and listen to him speak, I said, oh, my Lord, this guy is articulate. He's intelligent. He's very well qualified. By the way, his experience was not that good. His resume did not make you say, we need this guy. His education didn't say, we need this guy. He would have been a guy who would have been chucked out of the screening process, but because of the ability to tell your story. So I believe the counter to this is actually the opposite approach. Don't take your dates off the resume. Be your authentic self. Use platforms like Cnect, which enables people to tell their story, to find the place that they should be at.
Yep, I think that's a good point, and one that I was actually just talking about during the break. Folks, we're on with Michael Nadeau. And Michael, when we come back, we'll have a minute or two to wrap. And I want to get your take on being your authentic self and putting your authentic views on social media. Where do we draw the line with having free speech and exercising that free speech and employers judging the totality of that? More when we return.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, we return with Michael Nadeau. And Michael, we left off with your advice to be one's authentic self, which I echo. What point and how do they incorporate that with not losing touch of their own free speech?
Listen, free speech and social media is your true authentic self, and you've got to find a place that fits your true authentic self, or be very careful of what you put out there, because the concept of social media is it puts you out there, and it is for the world to see, and it's for the world to judge, and it's also for the world to make an opinion or have potential bias.
And that's exactly how I see it, which is why I have no problem sharing my opinions. I'm like, hey, if you don't like him, you don't like him. Probably not going to hire me, and that's cool. And if you do, you do, and super, you'll listen to the show. Michael, I want you to let everybody listening know how they can learn more about Cnect and how they can follow you.
Yeah, thank you. So Cnect is a platform that's designed to help employers move the process quicker and get more data. But Cnect is also a platform that will allow people to tell their stories. It's connected.com, CNECTED. And you could go on there and register for a profile. It's completely free for people. We believe it's the future of hiring. So I appreciate you having me on.
You bet. Michael Nadeau, CEO of Cnect. Check them out at connected.com, CNECTED.com. Michael, thank you so much for your time. Folks, Open Phone America is coming up right now. We're about 6, 7, 8 minutes away from Open Phone America. Get your calls in now, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. And if you want to join our late night national town hall conversation, feel free. 833-482-5337 is the phone number, 833-4-VALDEZ. This is the Wednesday night edition of the program, hour number 3. And we like to call it Open Phone America. Why? Because that's what Larry King and Jim Bohannon called it. And it's a time-honored tradition here that I have lots of respect for and am humbled and honored to continue that tradition with you all, the wonderful listeners of this program. So looking forward to chatting with you. We got a lot of things on the table tonight. And of course, you know, we could be talking about funding in Ukraine and the Ukraine war. We could be talking about all sorts of things, but it's whatever you want to talk about in this last hour of the program, because ultimately you guys called the shots in this hour. So I'm looking forward to speaking with you. And in addition to our conversation with former Governor and Ambassador Gilmore about funding Ukraine, we've talked about, of all things, which I thought was a really interesting topic, ageism and how that still plays a role in the workplace today. I didn't think that was such a big deal anymore because my views on employment are just, I guess, very different. I kind of think, you know, if they don't want me, I don't want them, right? But that's, you know, I understand when your back's against the wall, you got to do what you got to do. And we also had a very interesting conversation prior to that with E.J. Antoni with respect to the second month in a row with increased inflation and Biden's lies, right? Joe El Viejito Biden and his lies about the economy. So we're going to talk about that stuff. And I also want to circle back to the story that we talked about earlier, which was, of course, Trump's looking at a trial that's going to begin. Now, I didn't think he was going to make any, he was going to have any trials before Election Day. I thought most of that stuff got tabled, but he's scheduled for this Monday to have a trial that starts. And my thinking here is, again, something may happen. One of his appeals, one of his motions, he filed an Article 78 action, which is a complaint against the government official, in this case, the judge in his New York case, who put a gag order on him. And when he started talking about the judge's daughter, who is a Democrat fundraiser, they put another gag order on him to stop him from talking about her. And I think that's incredibly unfair because it just is, right? It's not witness intimidation. She's not a witness to anything. He's just stating the facts. But he filed a lawsuit against the judge. And I'm curious to see if between now and Monday that puts the kibosh on this trial as well until after the election. So we'll see how that goes. But somebody that I didn't expect to come out and talk about this was the original attorney for Stormy Daniels. And this, again, is the money that was paid to Stormy Daniels that they call the hush money. Perfectly legal, by the way. And he came out and had something to say about this case. And I thought it was really interesting because, A, he's in jail and he's doing the interview from jail. And he said that basically regarding the Alvin Bragg case, he doesn't think that Trump can get a fair trial in New York. And I thought that was pretty fair for a guy who's been sitting in jail for a while, right? Because he's sitting in jail because he ripped off his clients, some of which were disabled. And he sued people on their behalf, got a settlement, and kept the money for himself. Unbelievable. Michael Avenatti. People were saying he was the next coming. He was going to be the president of the United States, the next Obama. Look at how he disappointed. Anyway, listen to this.
And I think the case has a lot of problems. Now, that does not, I don't mean to suggest that means that Trump will not be convicted, because I think he will be convicted because number one, He's a criminal defendant, and in our society, I don't believe that criminal defendants generally get a fair shake. In fact, I think that the percentage of convictions demonstrates that the deck is stacked decidedly against all criminal defendants. Number one. Number two, I don't think that he can get a fair trial in New York. And to the people who claim that, in fact, he can get a fair trial in New York with a New York jury, I would ask them if they were to go to sleep tonight and wake up tomorrow and find out that the case had been moved to Mississippi or Alabama, would they still think that the trial was going to be fair? And I think if they were being honest, they would answer no. So I don't think he can get a fair trial in New York.
Well, there you go. That's Michael Avenatti, right? The once great legal scholar. Not really, not ever. But he was, what was it that the Tucker Carlson used to call him? Sleazy porn lawyer. I think that's what he used to call him. Sleazy porn lawyer. Anyway, that's Michael Avenatti. And I thought it was remarkable that he, having some time to think about this, was able to come up with that conclusion. I think it was actually pretty right there. And that was part of the reason Trump asked to move that trial out of Manhattan, and that was denied. Then he requested to have a different judge, and as part of that same motion, and again, that was denied. So what we have left now is his Article 78 action, and we'll see how that goes. So I wanted to come full circle on that. Now, along those lines of crazy, there's been some talk about reparations. Now, reparations, not something that I think are due today, because quite simply, they might have been due one day, but they're not due today, certainly, right? Many people are the descendants of slaves, many. And I don't know that entitles you to something that was due to one of them, especially when it's very difficult to prove. Right? What is this criteria to make to prove who, where, and what was a slave and your relationship to who, where, and what? I think this is an impossibility. I really do. It's kind of like, somebody who hits the Powerball for $100 million, and you go, you know what? My uncle's brother's third cousin from 50 years ago was married to somebody who was the step cousin of somebody who 3 times removed is actually their ex-husband. Or that person's ex-wife. And guess what? You're going to get laughed out of town thinking that you have a right to anything with being so far removed. And I think that's where we are today. Saying that you don't get money for reparations doesn't mean that reparations may not have been a good idea a million years ago. Might have, sure, but not today. It just doesn't work out today. We can't prove it. Yeah, even if you could say, you know what, my great-great-grandmother or grandfather was a slave, and I have Ancestry.com to prove it. So who's expected to pay you this money? Robert E. Lee? The Democrats in the South? The KKK? Like, who do you expect to pay this money? I guess it would have to be, as Mark Levin has suggested, perhaps the Democrat Party, since they were always so pro-slavery, pro-segregation, pro-Jim Crow. But I doubt that's going to be the case. So it's in reality, it's a moot point. It's not about whether you think it's right or wrong. It's whether it's doable or not. And it's not. So we have to move on from that. But Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett and one of your favorites, Whoopi Goldberg from The View, they have a different perspective on this. Whoopi Goldberg thinks that we have to bring slavery back, and Jasmine Crockett thinks that maybe we should have reparations. So I don't know which one of these to go with first. I wish I had a coin to toss because they're both so interesting. But I want you to listen to Whoopi Goldberg. Check this out.
Take a look at the things that they're rolling back. Remember I said ages ago, they, in their minds, they want to bring slavery back. They're okay with it because, you see, things change. One of the good things about the Supreme Court is you can fight to make sure you make stuff better. You don't generally fight to make stuff worse. Or to roll back. And to me, if you're okay rolling that back, when things were not even a state, when we had no say, So how's that going to roll? How's that going to roll? What's the next thing? Because, on this, with all of this comes birth control. Right. With all of this comes everything that you need as a woman to have had put in place to make sure that we were doing better than we were before.
I'm so lost here, and I try to use cuts that have the entire context. But how is bringing slavery back include birth control? I'm really lost on that. She says, "Well, but what's the next thing? Because on this, with all of this comes birth control. With all of this comes everything that you need as a woman to have had put in place." To make sure that we were doing better than we were before. I honestly don't understand. That's a really long sentence, and how that says Republicans want to bring back slavery. Honestly, I don't know. Now, I don't think that's true, right? I don't think Republicans want to bring back slavery. Number one, because Republicans were the anti-slavery abolition party, number one, like literally founded for that purpose. And number two, I just don't see how any of this argument is made. But this is the rhetoric that you get, right? Saying that we want to roll things back in the Supreme Court. Now, of course, she's talking about Supreme Court and the IVF decision and things like that. But how does that equate? It doesn't equate to slavery. But she's making this very big political jump, saying that because a Roe v. Wade was overturned, because the Supreme Court took up that case, because there was activism around it, that now you're forced and compelled, right? There's never a conversation about, it's your body and your choice if you want to have sex with someone or not. If you want to potentially risk getting pregnant, then you have to deal with the potential consequence of that. But no, this is totally, I do what I want, and there's no accountability for me. But if something were to happen, I want the right to be able to use abortion as birth control. No, I'm sorry. I just don't think that's appropriate. And I also don't equate that to slavery. But Jasmine Crockett, she does, and we'll do that in the next segment. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, to the phones we go. I want you to hear a clip of audio from Representative Jasmine Crockett, where she attempts to make the case for reparations. And I think it goes swimmingly badly. Listen to this.
Just this past week, I saw, I don't remember which celebrity, but it was actually a celebrity. And I was like, I don't know that that's not necessarily a bad idea, but I'd have to think through it a lot. One of the things that they propose is black folk not have to pay taxes for a certain amount of time, because then again, that puts money back in your pocket. But at the same time, it may not be as objectionable to some people about actually giving out dollars. Yeah. But obviously then you start dealing with the different tax brackets and things like that. And that's one of the reasons that, we argue the reparations make sense, because so many black folk, not only do you owe for the labor that was stolen and killed and all the other things, right? But the fact is, we end up being so far behind, right? And so it's how do you bring forth people? Exactly. And so it's if you do the no tax thing for people that are already, say, struggling and aren't really paying taxes in the first place, it doesn't really exactly.
They may want those checks like they got during COVID.
Exactly.
So this is fascinating to me. Jasmine Crockett is proposing a tax holiday. And if that is the case, then I am also the descendant of slaves, and I want in on not paying taxes for whatever amount of time she's recommending. And I think many of us would. And if we can get Democrats in the United States government to say no to collecting taxes, my goodness. I mean, I'm voting for her, right? Obviously, before she's even done making that idea and putting it out there, that comment goes by the wayside with the host that's interviewing her on this podcast, essentially, just letting her know why this won't work. And I think she herself realizes, once you start getting into the other tax brackets, I don't know what that has to do with anything. I guess she's saying that it would destroy our tax system, because if, let's say, we stop taxing the guys that pay a lot, whomever they are. So, if you're a Democrat, you'll say the guys that pay a lot are middle America, middle income earners. If you are a conservative, you'll say it's the most wealthy amongst us that pay the most in taxes, which I would agree with, right? The people that earn the most are the people that pay the most. Either way, who's going to complain about not paying taxes other than the people that benefit from all that tax money, i.e. Jasmine Crockett, right? Civil servants, public servants, people that, are on the public dole, the public payroll as public servants. So I think her idea is one that I would support wholeheartedly. I would love for somebody to say, you know what, you are a descendant of slaves and you don't have to pay tax. Fantastic. Sign me up. Anyway, lots of people out there. I think we got almost all of our phone lines filled up with lots of comments from everything from homelessness in California to Ukraine to El Trompito. So let's see, where do we start? Let's go to whoever's been on hold the longest. Stephen, Valhalla, Michigan, WIAN. Tell us about Pearl Harbor and your thoughts on that.
I'll take you off speakerphone if it is bad. Okay, off of speakerphone. Rich, I'm calling from the Anti-Slavery International headquarters. Are you hearing me well?
Stephen, you got 10 seconds left to make your point. Come on, let's go.
Okay. The truth about Pearl Harbor, as related by Stanley Orris, Seaman First Class of the United States Navy, is that double treason was committed at Pearl Harbor, inasmuch as the Washington Admiralty gave out two treasonous orders. They ordered that the anti-aircraft ammunition from all of the capital ships was removed from those ships. That is.
So why are you shouting as if you're doing a play?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I can't hear back. The second treasonous act that the admirals committed was that they opened all of the double hull inspection hatches on all of the capital ships simultaneously. Each of these two orders are treasonous. And my Uncle Stanley stood on the deck of the Nevada with a 50-pound bag of potatoes in between his legs, throwing potatoes at the propellers of the incoming strafing Japanese attacking aircraft. And I said, Uncle Stanley, why were you throwing potatoes at the aircraft propellers? And he said, that is all we had to fight with. We had an M1 from the Surf Patrol and a .45 caliber pistol to fight with, and that's all the ammunition we had to shoot with. Rich, did you see any anti-aircraft ammunition or any AK fire coming from the capital ships shooting at the Japanese airplanes? I didn't see
I wasn't there, Stanley. Stephen, I wasn't there. And I thank your Uncle Stanley for his service. And it's a remarkable theory and story. And, it doesn't surprise me, even if it were true, it doesn't surprise me that our government might have failed us, right? They fail us on a regular basis. And we've seen how an administration like Joe Biden's can consistently and repeatedly make gaffes or mistakes or sabotage us from succeeding. Stephen, thank you for that tidbit of history and your analysis on it. I appreciate it. Folks, we're coming right back with the rest of your calls and more. And I want to know what you think about Jasmine Crockett's plan on reparations.
America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, America, welcome back. Rich Valdez with you straight till 1 a.m. And I want to go to a call. Let's go to a caller from Memphis, Tennessee, listening, streaming online, richvaldez.com. Let's go to Brett Brett, go right ahead.
Yes, sir. Can you hear me good?
Everybody hears you, sir.
Okay. Where do we start?
You're the one calling me. Tell me.
Okay. I called as soon as you were talking to the governor, and I wanted to say I do not agree with funding Ukraine.
All right. Why?
By any means. Why? Well,
I think we got an echo on the line.
He stated that he was a Republican, correct?
You don't want to fund Ukraine because you think Gilmore is a Republican?
No.
Why don't you want to fund Ukraine, Brett?
Because it's genocide that's going on. That is the actual genocide. Not what's going on in Israel, not what's going on in Palestine. What's going on in Ukraine is the actual genocide. And our leader that's running our country right now.
When you say genocide, are you talking about Putin killing Ukrainians?
Yes, it's basically Biden killing Ukrainians more so than it is Putin.
And so your thought is because people are killing people that we should not honor a commitment that we made to them, 40 years ago when they gave up their nukes.
Ukraine started this by killing their own people. While we had Obama as president and Biden as vice president, everything that was going on over there was just the start of it then. And they kept us in the dark. We didn't know that Crimea was getting taken back by Russia. We didn't know that the people of Crimea actually wanted to belong to Russia.
I knew. I remember when that happened.
So Rich. Right. But most of us didn't because it wasn't out there being mainstreamed. You know?
I disagree. I think it was a huge story, and Obama was kind of like, "Look, you can't do that. I'm drawing a line in the sand." And he's, "Oh, you did it. You don't do that again." And he allowed the whole thing to happen. And the premise that I have, this is not pro-Zelensky, pro-Ukraine, pro-giving away money. That's not my position. My position is very simple, and it's that we signed something called the Budapest Memorandum of Security Assurances that said, hey, look, you give up your nukes, and the United States will protect you in perpetuity for giving up those nukes. Because you're not a part of NATO, but we want nuclear disarmament, and we did that. And when we did that, we made this commitment to them. So what we've done is give them weapons and aid to fight their fight. And I think we're still doing that. Now, it's come at this ridiculous number because Biden has sent more money than anybody has ever thought of sending anywhere to Ukraine. And I think that that's obscene. And that's where we are, right? We have poor management, probably a ton of corruption without question. So I understand people not wanting to fund this war. I get that. The problem is it's kind of like saying, look, my kid is a brat. I don't like this kid. He doesn't pay. He's breaking all the rules. It doesn't really matter, right? You go to court and the judge is going to say, that's your kid. You have a commitment to this kid and you've got to take care of him. Now, I'm not saying Ukraine is our kid, but I am saying we made a deal with them and it said, we will protect you. And if we're not going to send troops there and we're not going to protect them that way, the only thing we can do is send them aid and guns and whatnot. Right now, I think Trump's come up with a very reasonable solution, which is we'll still send you the money, but we want it back, right? We're going to give you we'll give you a pack of missiles or we'll do whatever, and we'll give you some logistical support. But from there, you've got to pay us back for everything else we give you. I think that's fair. I think it's unfair to say, all right, we're just going to not help you because in effect, what happens is if the United States is public about not helping Ukraine and not honoring that commitment, one, we look like Welchers on our deal that we made, way back when on this Budapest memorandum. And number two, that's the real green light to Putin. He will absolutely go in there and eat their lunch for as long as he wants because now he knows nobody's going to intervene. As long as he doesn't mess with Poland and any of the NATO countries, in effect, Ukraine will be a new part of Russia. And I think this is legitimately the basis of why we fought a world war in the past. Same exact criteria. So in order to prevent that from happening again and to make sure that world leaders are not emboldened like Putin is, then you step in and you say, look, we can't have this. But I think this is where Biden has failed. He hasn't stepped in and said anything. And when he has said something, it's with no teeth. He's a paper tiger. So ultimately, nobody respects him. And that's the difference between Biden and Trump. I think people knew Trump was a wild card in many ways, and they had to take him seriously. because there was a legitimate threat there. But I don't think that shooting the messenger, if you don't like Gilmore and you think he's a rhino, that's fine. I asked him about that, and we asked and answered. He gave his response. I don't think that's the reason we shouldn't fund Ukraine. I think that there is a fair amount of very pro-Putin propaganda that's making its way through American politics, where a lot of people think that, that if you given a choice, who do you pick, Joe Biden or Putin? I think there's a lot of people who are going to say Putin, and not because they actually think that he would do a better job, but because the propaganda coming from the Kremlin has affected them so much. They look up to his bravado. They think that he's a strong, tough leader, and they wish we had a leader like that. I understand that. I wish I had a leader like that too. But I'm never going to pick Putin even over a corrupt American, because ultimately Putin is who he is. All right, Joe Biden is a lot of things, and he's letting in half of the world at the southern border, and he's turned a blind eye on American troops, and we lost soldiers on his watch. But on his worst day, he doesn't compare to Vladimir Putin.
Our president is a pedophile that took showers with his adult daughter, Rich.
Again, this is no defense of Biden. How does that do anything about Ukraine funding? It's nonsensical to go from one topic to the next. She wrote in her diary that this is what happened. I feel badly for them and for their family. That's very bad, very bad. But that has zero to do with the United States honoring a commitment that it made to Ukraine. And this is my point. If you start going down these rabbit holes, you never end. Right? It's just because he's bad because of this, and he's so-and-so's a rhino. Biden's a pedophile. Throw all of that out the window. They're all bad. Super. Do we owe something to Ukraine for taking away their nukes? When we signed a contract with them and said, give us your nukes, and we've got your back. We have to have their back. That's pretty much the bottom line. Thank you for your call, Brett. I appreciate it. Folks, we're coming right back. The rest of your calls and more. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Best head of hair in live late night radio 6 years in a row. It's Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. So, yeah, I know whenever I talk about Ukraine and how I think we owe them the commitment that we made to them of honoring our deal with them, there's always a lot of folks, typically conservatives like me, that immediately whatever cause I've ever supported, right? Whether it's small government, pro-life, America First, you name it, all that goes out the window, and now I become the latest rhino on the block because I think that we should not abandon Ukraine. Now, that doesn't mean I think we should give them more of our money. I'm all for the politicians in Washington doing what they do. Members of Congress saying, hey, look, not a single penny more for Ukraine until we get that border shut down. No more asylum seekers allowed. No more parole program. No more catch and release. I want to see a real commitment from this administration. And you want some Ukraine money? We'll do that. Kind of like they did with the Israeli war deal when they wanted money for that. Same thing. I think they should do the same thing. I know, and I'm sure there's a handful of people trying to do it, and more than a handful trying to oppose that because it makes it more difficult for them to play their politics. I get that, and I think I'm all for it. I'm all for all of it. This way we can definitely address the issue. But ultimately, I'm also supportive of saying we agree to help Ukraine to the tune of $50 million per year. And, may they do what they do with that. Use it at your own discretion. We're going to help you, and we're going to help you for the next, 10 years. And when you reach $500 million or whatever, I'm just making numbers up. And when you reach $500 million, then that's it. We've reached our limit, and then you have to start paying back in order, in the form of a loan. And once you start paying it back, then, we can maybe engage in this line of credit again. And, some logistical support and maybe, some missiles or whatever, some sort of fair deal where they can fight, like what Trump offered them when he made his famous perfect phone call. And and help these people. Understood. I think you don't want to ever send the message that the United States is not here to help you, because the minute we're not, someone else will be, or someone else will just join. Look, we already know that China and Putin are happy to become allies if there's a need, right? I could see China saying, hey, you know, China, look, first, China's put factories in Peru. They've put factories in India. They've got factories in Mexico. Why? Factories in Vietnam. Why do they have those factories? Because people are saying, I'm not buying made in China anymore. So they're moving the factories to these places. And you're still getting Chinese goods made by Chinese people in their Chinese factory, owned by the Chinese Communist Party. China knows what they're doing. And they're happy to eat our lunch anytime they get a chance. Iran hates our guts, and they literally open their sessions of parliament chanting it. Death to America. So you tell me, are we going to be that reckless and say, no, screw Ukraine, we're not going to be involved, when we know that these people are already looking to make these alliances even stronger and put a potential conflict with NATO on the table and form a new axis of evil? I mean, we can't allow history to repeat itself. We have to learn from our lessons. Anyway, that's all I've got on that one. John, Reno, Nevada, listening online, richvaldez.com. Go right ahead.
Good morning, Rich.
Hola.
You know, the other day, Hamas had to turn down a deal from the IDF for hostages for peace. And the reason being was they didn't have 40 hostages left. This is a travesty. 3 months ago, 2 months ago, 1 month ago, Israel could have easily made a deal to release all the hostages. They could have released many Palestinian prisoners. It would have had no effect on the outcome of the war. Nothing would have changed as far as the outcome of the war, and all the hostages could be free. Now that we're down in this hole and most of the hostages have starved to death, it's a travesty that something wasn't done earlier.
Yeah, I definitely can't agree with that. I don't think I've ever seen such an opportunity presented. I've never seen Hamas say we're willing to let go of every hostage. I've seen them negotiate for a handful of hostages at a time and refuse to leave the areas that they occupied, to refuse to leave hospitals and schools. And that's why there was a bombing at a hospital. So if it were that simple, I think it would have happened. But the fact was that they were hiding these people in tunnels, and they weren't willing to release all the hostages. They were only willing to release a handful at a time. So if that were the case, there'd be no war. And it's a sad commentary that we have to even have such a conversation. But lamentably, that's what's happening. And I mean, there's not any part of me that believes that Israel is looking for this fight. This fight came to them. They've always had the ability and the superiority militarily to go in there and do what they're doing. They've always had it. And they're doing it now because they were provoked. And they're going to see it through because they feel they need to, because what happened can never happen again. And I understand that from a people that, you know, faced potential extinction during the Holocaust. And now again, with this new mini Holocaust, if you will, I can't blame them ever for being vigilant and wanting to get the job done. But I don't think that anybody is trying to, if Israel didn't want the hostages, they could have flattened the entire place. Carpet bombing. There was no need to go door to door and try and even make an attempt to get these people back. So it doesn't ring true to me. But John, thank you for the call. I appreciate it. Let me see. We have to take a pause here, but we'll come back. Speed round, and we're going to Oregon on the West Coast, Montana right in the middle of America, Michigan, Arkansas, Idaho, and more. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Rich Valdez, who again will do a fine job, and I know you'll enjoy listening to him.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, it's the speed round. I want to go to Lansing, Michigan, WILS. Ken, go right ahead quickly. What are your thoughts on Israel?
Rich, I think they need to do what they got to do to clean that up. They didn't start it. They were attacked just like us when we were unprovoked attacked on 9/11. We didn't listen to anybody telling us what to do to defend ourselves, and Israel shouldn't either. The United States and Great Britain in 3 days in 1945 unmercifully dropped incendiary bombs on the city of Dresden, Germany, and burnt the entire town down, killing over 60,000 civilians. And I never heard anybody crying about that. Have a good night.
Thank you, Ken. Well said. Thank you for pointing out the history there. And let's go to Evergreen, Montana, KOFI, our buddy Frank. Frank, go right ahead, sir.
Hi, Rich. Last night you had a gal on talking about euthanasia of the elderly in the UK.
Yes.
They have someone's got an old house or whatever with too many rooms.
Right. If you're old and you live alone, they want to force you to sell your house through eminent domain. And they were suggesting, what's the next step? Euthanasia?
Well, according to Snopes, that was all false. That was something that Elon Musk made up in his social network.
Well, according to Snopes, the 2020 election was legitimate. According to Snopes, January 6th was an insurrection. I mean, I think everything is relative when it comes to Snopes. They tell you the story that they want to hear. And the reality is, they're not looking to kill people right now. I think the commentator was suggesting that that would be a next step in such an aggressive proposal of having people sell their homes or, offering them an opportunity, if you mean, quote, to sell their home if they felt their home was too big for them. But that's government speak for the government wants your house. And I've been involved in government long enough to know that don't believe the flowery language. What you usually fear is usually what's driving those policies. Frank, thank you for your call. Big shout out to Evergreen, Montana, KOFI. Let's go to Pendleton, Oregon, West Coast in the building. Check in with our buddy Michael very quickly. Go right ahead.
Yes, Rich. Great talking to you. Say, you're not a rhino. You're a great American, Rich, like Billy Cunningham. I wouldn't say I love America. We need to do what's best for America. But I agree with you. We need to honor the Budapest Agreement and help Ukraine the best way we can and in a sensible way.
You're right. 100% right. And my best to your girlfriend, I know that she lives there and is probably fearful of what it looks like if Russia stays there or tries to come back and take even more of Ukraine. And I think that's an issue, right? Again, we have to be sensible and fair. Doesn't mean that it's our number one priority. Our southern border is our number one priority. We just can't turn around and be isolationists. This is something I think that didn't work when we tried it before. Putting America first doesn't mean not being involved in anything else. I think that's a farce, and it's a mistake to think that putting our nose where it doesn't belong is somehow an actual viable policy perspective. It's just not. Michael, thank you for your call. Big shout out to KUMA in Oregon. And let me see, with a minute to go, who else do we have on the list? Let's go to Paul, Boise, Idaho. Go right ahead. California homelessness. What say you?
Thanks, Rich. It was, excuse me, it was the migrants that I saw on the sidewalk of New York that gave me the idea for the tankers to bring the food into them.
Thank you, Paul. Yeah, there's a crisis in California. New York City's just as bad. Everybody's in bad shape in the big cities. Folks, hasta la próxima. Until the next time, take care, good night, and God bless you, America. I'm Rich Valdez.